This is Ken's 97 Stowe 171 again. Thought I'd give you an overview of my truck here a little bit. It's a 2005 Volvo VN670, and I thought I'd show you the dashboard here. This gauge here on the top left is the exhaust gas temperature gauge. Turbo boost pressure. Full boost is usually between 30 and 35 psi. Oil pressure, tack, coolant temperature, speed. This is your primary air tank. I'm sorry, that's not. That's your brake pressure applied. When I press the brakes, that pressure tells you how much pressure is being applied to the brakes. It can help. It's more used for when you're using the trailer brake to tell how much you're applying it. So the handle doesn't really have any feedback or anything. And then these two gauges, you got front primary air tank and the secondary air tank. On the digital gauge here, you have outside temperature, oil temperature, coolant temperature, battery voltage, and temperature of the front drive axle and the rear drive axle, and pressure in the airbags in the air suspension. This truck has air ride front suspension also, so there's 77 pounds in psi in the front and 18 in the rear, because right now I have an empty trailer, so there's not really any weight on the drive axles. The second number there is very handy, because when I've got a load on, let's say I got 45,000 pounds of something in the trailer, and it's loaded front to back basically evenly. Well, I know as long as I'm under about 58 psi or less, I'm under the legal limit. It's actually more. I could probably get up to 60 psi before I'd be in trouble. But I know if I'm at 58 psi, I'm okay. So what I do is I'll look in the back of the trailer, see where they loaded the cargo to, and I'll put the trailer wheels right underneath the last pallet. And as long as that number here on the dash isn't over 58 psi, I know I got a nice balanced load. Anyway, on to the next thing, and we're back to the outside temperature. Then we got fuel information. You've got gallons per hour and your average fuel economy. Sitting here at idle uses right about half a gallon an hour, 0.6, 0.7, but really when you kick it to high idle like you're supposed to, it generally burns a gallon an hour, 0.8, 0.9, something like that. It'll fluctuate back and forth. You have how many gallons have been used since you reset it the last time, 95 gallons there. How many gallons you have until empty, and that's approximated. It goes by the gauge, by the gas gauge, which isn't really accurate, but you can usually figure out whether it, based on how much that number is accurate. How many gallons have gone out? The computer knows how much fuel has been consumed because it's an electronically injected engine. So between that number, how much has gone out, and how much it says is left, and you know you had full tanks, and you know how much, it's 175, let's see, it's 275 gallons total in the two tanks. So you can figure it out, how accurate that is. And then back to the time and distance. You've got the time, the date, alarm. You got 2 trips, which I never use. Your average miles per hour. And I don't know what the hell that one is. On the display, you can black the panel out so at night you don't have it lit, it's not bugging you. You can change the display so that the various things are shown differently. You can change the backlight contrast. And then when the engine's off, you can turn it on. There's another section under display. Okay. Called diagnostics, and you can go in and look at. You can check diagnostics on engine, trans, brake, vehicle, ECU, climate control, and the light control module, and an airbag ECU, and check for that kind of stuff. You can do a cluster self-test, which what that does is you can do a telltale test, which turns on all of the lights like that. See, all the lights go on, tell you if you got a bulb burned out. You can do a gauge test, and what that does is make all of the gauges go to 0, all the way to the top, and all the way back down. And then back to and up to the middle, and then back to the 0, back to what they actually are. It tells you if you got a bad gauge. And then you got a display test, which will run the display through various contrasts. It went dark right now, and it'll do a checkerboard and some other things. And then a speaker test tells you that the flashers are working. You can even get part numbers off of things. If you do the engine ECU, it'll give you hardware number and software numbers and all kinds of stuff. So that's that. I hope that gave you some valuable information there. Some other information about my truck. It is I said it's an 05 Volvo VN670. It's got a 15-liter Cummins engine. Makes 450 horsepower and about 1,600 pound-feet of torque. Peak torque is at right about 1,100 RPM. 1,100, 1,200 RPM is peak torque. And as you can see by the tach, it's a very narrow RPM window. It starts about 900 RPM, goes to 1,700 RPM. So, that's typical of most diesel engines. It's got a variable vane turbo in it. The boost comes up real quick. Anything over about 1,100 RPM, and the boost will go all the way up to the top. About 35, 40 psi. 30, 35 psi really. Occasionally it'll touch 40. But so anyway, that's the overview of my truck. Y'all have a good day and be safe out there.